All right then, folks, let's kickstart this evening with a brilliant webinar by the very distinguished and eminent speaker of tonight, Srishti Sofat. Srishti is the Group Vice President at Oracle CX Marketing. She brings over 24 years of experience across US and India in building and scaling large-scale consumer enterprise cloud products. She has been solving interesting problems in marketing, automation, personalization, mobile, MarTech, loyalty, and consumer search to help a global set of customers. She drives a strong culture of product innovation, customer retention, and growth. In her current role at Oracle, she leads the product development for Oracle CX marketing products. She's a champion for the Oracle Women Leadership, Mentorship Program, and Diversity Initiative. A very warm welcome to you, Srishti. We are thrilled to have you here with us tonight. Handing the session over to you now.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And am I able to share now, Shama? Are we going to swap it to me?
Yes, I'll stop sharing. Okay, Srishti, can you see the poll on the screen?
Yes, I can. And is my screen visible as well, Shama?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, so good mix. I mean, I think, as expected, large folks in the product area and many people related to product. We seem to have a few folks who are heading, I guess, a business or a company. But thank you. So it's a good audience for, I think, what I'm going to be talking about. All right. Are you still?
No, I'm not running the poll. You can continue, Srishti.
Okay, I can still see the poll screen.
You'll have to close that window on your screen.
Okay. Oh, it's on my. Oh, sorry. I was also meant to do the polls. I forgot that part. Okay, no problem. All right. So again, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm not really sure in this global world which part of the world you're from, but really, really happy to be here and to be talking about something close to my heart, which is the transformation in the industry that we are seeing. And really the changing face of the customer, as the title says, for the B2b and B2C customer. What I'm planning to discuss today is really, what's going on in the CX space, what are the customer expectations, sort of, carving out a vision of what could be a vision for a company around CX, and then talking a little bit about tools and approaches to achieve that vision. As I talk today, I'm hoping that all of you can sort of, relate to some area of your business and you can see how you can apply this to your current product, to your current business, to your current industry. And we can definitely then, have the Q&A and interesting Q&A as Sharma mentioned. So, we are really in the age of experience, right? So if you take a look at this image, I think maybe even 3 years ago, we would have said that this image is possibly of a B2C customer, maybe sitting at their house trying to do some online commerce transaction. With the last 2 years and what the pandemic has done, and all of us are distance learning, shopping, working, everything is kind of merging on top of each other. This very person sitting here could be both a B2C consumer at home buying something for the evening dinner, or this person very well could be sort of a key stakeholder, a buyer in a B2B scenario, right? So essentially, one of the distinct things that is happening, and this had actually started even pre the pandemic, but I think what has really accelerated this is the merging of the B2B and B2C when it comes to CX, right? So that line is really getting blurred. And what you need to realize is that the customer decides when and how they will engage with the brand, right? Because they are right now at the center of it, and they want to control what their experience is. And one thing to remember is that the brands who are now going to be successful in this new age are who are keeping pace with that, right? Who are able to, get the CX at the center of B2B and B2C for their customers. So moving on and giving you some stats here, really CX today is a conversation at the BOD, right? It is no longer the problem for the head of marketing of a company or the head of sales of a company or the head of service for a company. It is really something which the CEO cares about, CFO cares about from an ROI perspective, definitely as well. And this is sort of reaching there. So that is something that, I want to make sure that, you guys are seeing it, and we can talk a little bit more about it later as well. Now, considering CX is a top priority for most companies and brands, I want to talk about what could be a vision for customer experience and how is a way to think about it, right? As we are talking about the customer being at the center, we want to make sure that the customer is really getting a personalized experience, right? So essentially, getting, meaning really, I should say expecting, right? In any CX today, we expect a personal experience. We've got spoiled with personalized recommendations, whether it's Netflix, whether it's our search engines, whether it's your commerce engine, we all are used to that. We all expect the systems to be a little smart, and that's where the whole predictive comes in. And we'll talk a little bit more about AI and ML later in the presentation. And last not the least, it's not just about the tech, right? It's not about the technology and using AI ML. People want to make sure that all of this is applied in a very purposeful way, that it's really solving a problem, and you're actually helping in some particular workflow, which could be B2B or B2C, right? So these sort of three things kind of bring together what I can think about vision. An example comes to mind, and this was, now it seems 2 years ago when I was flying a little bit more. I was in Mumbai for a day meeting. So I had taken the first flight in early in the morning, and I was on the last flight out because, I was all day in meetings. And incidentally, I finished my presentation around 3:34, or maybe I had a wrap up and I had done one presentation, and I was sitting and I see this text coming in. And the text was from the airline, and it was like, have you finished your business early, and would you like to take a early flight back home? And here's the link, and you can just check in easily. And there I was sitting and thinking, okay, this thing has got wrapped up sooner. And it was, to me, it was predictive and it was purposeful. They kind of figured out the pattern. They could, and it was the right message at the right time. Forget everything else, right? And it suddenly, made me feel like, hey, this brand really, knows what they're talking about, and I can click this button and head to the airport early and reach home earlier, right? So in my kind of B2C workflow in that scenario, the CX, made sense, right? So I think it's really these kind of stories which have to come together for your customers, for them to feel that the experience that they're having with your brand is personalized, predictive, and purposeful. And we will talk a little bit more about all of this, but I do want you to keep these three concepts in mind as we go through the presentation today. So this was ideal, but what do we see today, right? It's not the perfect world, and I'm not claiming it is the perfect world, right? We still have an incident where you're getting multiple marketing messages for things maybe you've already purchased, or you've clearly, shown disinterest towards. You're getting bombarded with messages around that, whether it's advertising or marketing. You could be, having a big escalation. You don't like the product, and you're talking to the service agent, and they are still, sending you an offer to buy it, right? Which could be like really something you're not interested in. You could place an order and you could get the wrong item, right? It may not be the right item, it may not be the right size, and you could be surprised. In a B2B scenario, you could be, a buyer talking about an enterprise account, and your account executive just doesn't know any details about you because there's been churn in the organization, and the new account executive is not updated. So there are many cases where, as both B2B or B2C customers, we still see that the process is broken and it's not been solved yet, right? So I want to pause here, and I'd ask Shama to, do a little poll for you guys to get a perspective from you, where I can get some input on your thoughts around why do you think we still see a little bit of this fragmented experience, and why is this problem not fully solved? So Shama, will you be able to launch that poll?
Yes, there you go. We'll give it a few seconds.
Sure.
Please feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat window as well, folks. We can read it at a later point. So if you face any challenges or you think any other challenges that you have faced in your profile, then please go ahead and let us know in the chat window. Yep. So I think here are the results, Srishti.
Right. Yeah. So, we will talk about all of them today, and I don't know if some things have come up in the chat. We can discuss those offline too. But I think you guys have, I think I see the top one as single view of the customer, which is I think a big part of the story. So let's get into it, right? Let's see, next slide. All right. So yes, it is easier said than done, right? We do see a disconnected data and a disconnected customer. Let's talk about the MarTech industry. In 2011, there were 150 MarTech vendors. Today, fast forward to 2020s, we have 8,000 vendors, right? So if people are using point solutions and do different things and integrating hundreds and hundreds of vendors for their MarTech problem, what ends up happening is you are in a disjoint state more than anything else. So you have to figure that out. The second one is, processes are slow, right? The customer's expectation is relevant, real time, and what we can't do is we can't really meet all of that based on our own processes and where we are with our tech stack, where we are with our people skill set, and many challenges on those lines. And then the last but not the least is really the failure to support these new and changing models, really, taking advantage of this AI, ML, not as, an abstract concept, but really as a concept to automate the workflow or simplify the workflow, right? So all of these end up being reasons for us not to achieve this nirvana goal of our vision of being, personal, predictive, and purposeful. So let me share, a little bit about the evolution of CX, and also, I've been saying CX from the beginning, and maybe some of you, are slightly unclear about what exactly is CX. So I want to spend a minute before, I talk more about this to explain what is CX, right? So CX is really about that whole experience and the touch point of your customer with your brand. So if you think of any company, right? It could be anybody. Let's take an airline, because I used airline as an example earlier, right? So let's take an airline. Now they have two parts of it. One is sort of their back end part, where they are doing, their own payroll, where they could be doing their own billing. They could be doing all of these internal processes to run that company. So that we could call them the back office applications. And then they have the applications where you can book the flight, where you can, maybe order the food, where you can call them for customer service, where you can, interact with the brand. So anything which is customer facing for that brand is really CX. So it includes any, marketing they may do. It includes any commerce they may do. It includes any sales activity they may do. It includes any service they may do. It includes loyalty that they may do. So CX is all those set of applications and experiences that the customers have, right? So that's just a little bit background for all of you. So, the evolution of CX and how this started is, on the left-hand corner, I'm talking about, ultimately, like all of you said, right? Single view of the customer is on the top of the list. So really, we want to make sure to have this excellent customer experience, right? Every customer interaction should matter, right? The brand should know about all these interactions for it to really work for the customer. But let's get back to that a little bit. Again, we'll double click into that, but let me talk a little bit about the evolution of CX with you guys as well, right? So 1990s, how this all started was single applications. You had a platform for sales. It was its own silo. You have a platform for service. You have a platform for marketing, and each one of these are different departments, and that because it was just coming up, and that's how it was. So it was bespoke applications. As we got into the 2000s, we started talking about point-to-point integration. So companies started integrating, you could integrate your marketing and service, you could integrate your sales and service. So APIs, point integrations, exchange of data, whatever, some way to kind of make these work. What we feel, this is some of the work I've been doing in Oracle, is around, just really thinking through this and, with our execs and the vision, and really what the vision here is to say that, listen, now to achieve this complete CX, we probably need, to look at everything end to end, and it's no longer, the vision of CX can't be achieved by point-to-point solutions or by, point-to-point integrations. We kind of have to have a holistic view of the customer and a suite to actually give them that view. So that's sort of directionally, the evolution of the platforms, if you will, around CX and how that's been happening. Now let me double click into what is required to solve this problem for you as a marketeer in your company, as you as a salesperson, as you as a product person who's thinking about a new product that you want to service and get out in the market. What are the things that you need to talk about to make it successful from a CX perspective, right? Number one, no surprise, right? You need to unify the data, because that is a big concern. So you cannot make anything personal for the customer unless you have all the data points about the customer, right? So bringing in the data together is number one. Number two is leveraging AI. Again, that was high on the list here. And again, no surprise, right? We're talking about predictive customers expecting that today. When you call somebody, they expect that if you call a service team, they expect that if you bought something, they know about it, right? So that's where the data unification comes in. They expect that you can predict, you'll get, they'll get to know your pattern and you'll get these offers, which makes sense, right? They can predict that at this point of the year, you every time order calendars, or at this time of the year, you're always ordering mugs for your family, whatever it is, right? And they're able to give you that right message because of the AI. And ultimately, to me, the intelligent orchestration is where this all gets very interesting, because that's where you bring all of this together, right? I mean, you can have the AI, you can have the data, but if you really can't solve the workflow, then there's no point. So keep in mind that these three have to be done well, and I'll talk a little bit more about all of them, right? So let's talk about this whole unification of the data and connected data. The idea really is that whatever other touch points with the customer, you need to have a method to have a single view of the customer, like I spoke about, whether it's the customer's purchasing something, they've seen an ad, whether you sent them a marketing message, whether they are a loyalty customer for you, whether they have a service request because they're unhappy with the product in a B2B scenario, whether it's a buyer which is leaving a lot of trail, can your salespeople take advantage of that? All of this needs to come together. Both unknown and known is also an important part today, where we sometimes do a lot of behavior with our cookies, and if it's first party cookie, how can that be connected to your known profile to give you that best personalized experience? So connected data is the top one here. The next one, as we spoke about, was embedded AI and ML. This is really about what you're seeing in the B2C scenario already, right? The best recommendation, you watch something, based on other people's pattern and prediction, you're recommended what is the best offer, what is the best show for you to watch. We all kind of see this in our day-to-day life, so it's easy to understand how people are using, on top of a unified data model, how can you use AI and ML? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, remember one thing, right? AI is nothing without the data, right? Because ultimately AI is about two types of data: historical data and real-time data. So it's, you've got your algorithms running on historical data, but AI needs to be sort of continuously learning. So any real-time interaction from you kind of feeds into that, and that's where you get your output, right? So ultimately your unified data and your data store is your source to build the next layer, which is the AI and ML models. And then the last but not the least is really turning that intelligence into action, right? Orchestrating it. And I'm going to walk through two journeys in the next two slides to sort of, kind of get that into light, as in what are we really talking about? How can we put these three together to get that experience which is purposeful, which is, at the end goal purposeful for the customer, right? So again, remember, you need the data, then you need AI and ML, and then you really need to be able to apply that AI and ML to turn that into an intelligent orchestration. It's not enough to, hire the best data scientists and write the best algorithms if you're not able to apply it to solve a real use case. And, I think that's also something that as an industry, we need to get better and better at. So let's talk about one B2C journey, right? Let's talk about a person who is, a customer, right? And this one we can all relate to very easily. You could talk about, as a customer, you are leaving a lot of digital footprint, right? You are, let's talk about a clothes retail company, right? And you could be browsing of, you want to buy something, so you could be browsing for that for a bit. So, you've left some digital footprint there. Then, you could be getting some offers. Hopefully there is some connection. It may be connected to what you are browsing, or let's assume that, they've got some profile information for you, getting some marketing information. Then you buy something, you like it or you don't like it. You have loyalty with them. Considering you have this full profile of information, now your expectation is that any interaction with them, they should know about the other things, right? If they don't, then your experience is not that great, right? So this is where it's the fundamental rule around customer 360, and then you leverage that to predict when and how customers are ready to engage. Right. So even in my whole airline example, right, they had my background, they had my history, they knew that, I'm doing these day flights, and I try to take the earliest possible based on my pattern if I can. So they're predicting the offer, right? And they're saying, please go leave now. I remember another delightful experience where it was, I sent flowers to my parents on their birthdays, and sometimes you're so busy that you forget, right? But the vendor who is the one you're using, 1 week before that is reminding you, hey, last year you sent it. Now this is not even fancy AI here, right? But this is just them keeping all the data and tracking it and giving you that message, right? And B2C, I think people have started doing this well. I think the only issues end up being you sometimes still call the service team and they don't know your name, so you're surprised, right? And you're like, what's wrong with you? So ultimately, you have to get your data together. We all are delighted when somebody addresses us by their name. We all are delighted when we get a little message, even though we know they probably know our birthday. When we get a little treat saying, hey, it's your birthday, you can go buy anything, right? When the brand tells us this. So all of these things are possible because they are collecting all this data. Now, what you can do to have intelligent orchestration of this data is really make sure that the customers are getting, let's take an example of a message. Does it have the right words? Somebody who's a loyal customer may get a very different verbiage, a subject line, a text message than somebody who's a net new customer, right? So can you use your technology to change and your AI to make sure that the message that a customer receives is personalized based on who that customer is? Forget the profile attributes of just gender and age group and where they live, but truly based on all this other rich data that you have on them. Are you able to put them into some bucket, right? These are propensity buyers. These people will spend more, like all this hyper personalization that you can do around that customer and put them in a bucket. That's where AI and data will help you. Even simple things like what's the best time to send a message to someone, right? Somebody may be a morning person on their non-work email or text messaging, or somebody may be an app person. So are you making sure that that message is personalized to each person's time? Some people get fatigued much sooner. They may get irritated with you if you send them too many messages. Do you know your customers? Are you messaging them? Are you contacting them at the right frequency? Some people are hyper, right? As soon as you buy something, if they don't get a text, they don't know if their order went through, right? So all of those kind of things have to be personalized, and it is not possible to do those things today without the data and the AI behind it. Shifting gears, let's talk about a B2B journey, right? Now, a typical B2B journey has two, stakeholders. Ultimately, it's a salesperson who is trying to sell something to a buyer. Now, this buyer is not an individual customer like you and me, but it's somebody working somewhere. So me as an Oracle employee, let's say if I had decisions of buying which computers should all Oracle employees get, or which routers should we be putting in our data centers, then I'm a prospective buyer for the Cisco or for a Dell or anybody to contact me as an Oracle employee to sell me something, right? So that's a profile for a B2B customer, right? They're regular people. They're you and me also, but as their job role, they are a buyer for an enterprise, right? Now, in this scenario, a lot of these things still remain the same, right? You still need to get the customer 360. You still need to understand that what is this persona, this person who is an employee of this account, let's say Oracle. What kind of ads are they clicking to? What are they browsing? But it's you have to make sure that this is sort of like the B2B persona of this person, right? So there are other interesting challenges there. But either way, the data unification aspect is very important. You need to bring together the search behavior, the advertising behavior, what landing pages are they clicking. That means they're looking to upgrade I don't know, their computer systems in the company, right? So you kind of have to build that intelligence based on the digital footprint that the customer is giving you, or the buyer in this case is giving you. And then you need to predict when would they be ready to buy, right? So ultimately, if you can build a solution here and have a journey here where, though you give all this marketing messages, and based on their behavior, you have written this AI ML algorithms, which can predict when will this buyer convert, this potential buyer, if you will, is now ready for an actual sales call, right? Actually, a human being maybe making a lead generation, actually converting, and a human being calling it. Now, that whole workflow, if that can be automated completely, that's a great advantage of the your data and how you leverage your AI and ML to make sure that you say, hey, this account now, Oracle is ready to buy, because we are seeing the behavior of all these buyers, potential buyers from this account, this company, and the digital footprint is telling us this without intelligence that they can get converted, right? So this would be something which without without leveraging all these three aspects of unification of data, making sure you've got AI and ML and prediction in place, and some intelligent orchestration, would be impossible, or would be a very broken experience, if you will, right? So these are the kind of journeys that today, we want to completely automate in this new world of customer experience. Shifting gears a little bit, right? We've been talking about tech, we've been talking about AI and how we can, transform CX. But I don't want to discount, let me just say, the human element, right? To make the vision of CX purposeful for your customers, the brand ultimately also has to have a trust element, right? If the customers don't trust them or the humans behind the tools, then the experience can very quickly be different, right? So the tools are great enablers, the technology is great enablers, enablement tools, but how we leverage it, how will the service exec still leverage the tool that maybe providing them all the data matters, right? How will the account executive still talk to the potential buyer still matters. So either way, the tools and the data and the AI can provide you all of that at your fingertips, but we also need the enablers for the complete CX experience. So, don't want to get too carried away by just that, and keep that in mind. And this is some interesting data, so I thought I'd share just to make the point that today customers truly have a lot of choices. And we had done sort of some informal survey and a formal survey, and the results were quite surprising, right? People walk away from a brand with a single bad experience, right? So as a brand, you truly can't afford it, right? Whether it's the technology aspect of it or the human aspect of it. If you don't end up giving a great customer experience to your customers, they have multiple choices and they will walk away. So that's something to, again, keep in mind. And which again brings us the importance of how important CX is becoming today for customers. I spoke about making it personal. I spoke about hyper personalization, and really that is true, right? But again, I always get this in questions, so I'm preempting it a little bit. I think the hyper personalization is important, but I think we cannot do it without privacy and security considerations. As CX practitioners, as technology, product managers, we all need to make sure that we respect. When we say the customer is at the center, we need to respect what the customers want, right? So that it can't be. If you're building a tool, it needs to have the privacy and security considerations. If you are interfacing with the customer, you need to make sure that the permissions are taken, right? All of this is in our industry and in CX becoming very, very important as well. So it's not just about whatever data you can grab. It is about the customer making the choice to share that data. You making sure that your technology platform and tools are adherent to privacy and security, and that's how you take it. Then you kind of engage in this experience. Social, right? I mean, today, especially with the Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, the new names coming up, millennium, social is a big channel. Now, again, we talk a lot about influencers. People are ready to put your brand out there, but it is not just about what your brand does. There is a little bit more to it. People want to know what you stand for. There is a larger aspect that people start caring about your brand rather than your core function. And companies have to think about it, right? You can't just talk about a brand in a sense of, this is what I do, which is I sell, whatever it could be, I sell books, right? People may care about what's your impact on the environment. People may care about what's your impact on what you're doing with the community. All of these aspects are part of your brand, right? So you can't not think about those and just be very, very focused on one aspect. So that's what it is. But you also need to make sure that your brand is where your customers are, right? So you want to make sure if your customers are in whichever channel, you are in that channel as well, right? I mean, it was interesting to hear Shama, right? I mean, definitely, I guess this talk is on a multi-channel platform, right? Because IPL has identified that their customers are sitting, not all are on Zoom, some are on LinkedIn, some are on Twitter. So they want to be where their customers are, and that's part of the story as well. And ultimately, what you want is an emotional affinity, right, to your customers, because, like I said before, the customers have many choices. A single bad experience is, they're ready to walk away. So what will keep them with you? That's kind of the trick, right? It's about using the tools, making sure your CX experience is really around, personalized. Yes, you can be predictive, making sure that you're delighting them with all the experiences. You can make sure it's purposeful by being beyond just the transactional relationship. And if you can create some level of an emotional affinity, because just based on your engagement with them, there is an emotional affinity that the customers feel with your brand, then you have it there, right? Now, we see that quite a lot in some personal experiences, right? All of us, if we go to, an airline, or we go to a hotel or a restaurant, they remember our previous order, they remember our name, they remember which part of the restaurant we like to sit in, we like it. Or they said, oh, you call, I knew you like this table, right? I mean, all of these are examples of what we want to see even in our online experiences, right? That's where the personalization comes in, and the affinity that, hey, this brand cares about me, or, this is what we're doing, or you go there and you see a poster that, they are sponsoring something, and, that connects you to them. I mean, everybody's trying different angles, right? So, but it's a whole experience which matters, right? So that's an important part of how you want to build your brand in your customer's mind. It's not about just a silo. All of these things have to come in together. Coming to the last one, which we also, had a lot of folks talking about ROI, right? I mean, ultimately, customer experience is not this wishy-washy thing. It actually helps the bottom line, right? I mean, that is why the the board is caring about it. That is why the CFO cares about it. That's why it's frontline news, right? And customers are willing to pay a lot more for a better experience, right? People value their time, people value their experience. So it's not just about a transaction for many folks today. With the way we are headed, they will choose one brand over the other because of the experience. I mean, even in consumer products, we know the reason so many iPhones sell is not based on function by function match. There are enough phones out there today which probably do many things and a point-to-point comparison better than the iPhones. But the iPhone has created this emotional affinity, this experience which is beyond, and so people are willing to pay much more, right? And we see that happen, right? So that's the kind of direction that you have to think about when you think about how can you have your customers pay for that experiential piece, and statistics telling that they're willing to pay 20% more, right? And last but not the least, to conclude, ultimately, it is hard to acquire new customers. It's costlier to acquire new customers. So it's very, very important to make sure that the customers you have are loyal, right? Because a lot of your ROI will be driven by how loyal your customers are with your brand, whether they are influencers, they can be references, that's the cherry on the cake. But even them coming and being repeat customers is great for ROI. Definitely, there is new customer acquisition, and there are lots of things that the brand needs to do for that. However, loyalty is a cornerstone of that, and ultimately, loyalty is nothing but a byproduct of exceptional customer experiences. So that wraps up the ROI aspect about how can you think about it. So this is, I think, my last slide. Hopefully this made sense to most of you, and I am at this point very welcome to questions, keeping in mind whichever area you want to stick about. Just to summarize, we spoke about the CX and how we talk about being personalized, predictive, and purposeful. And as we get to purposeful, it's not just about intelligent orchestration. It is a little bit about the human element and the complete brand, right? So keep these thoughts in mind as you go back, even if you don't get a chance to ask the question, and see how you can apply it. Thank you. And I hand it over back to you, Shama, for the next part, Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Srishti, for delivering a brilliant session. Really great and thought-provoking insights. I'm pretty sure the audience agrees with me. So we have a few questions in the Q&A window, if you can have a look at it. Yeah, just before that, just give me a moment to share my screen.
Okay, I have stopped sharing, so you should be good, right?
Yeah. So audience, you can go ahead and scan and post your question in the Zoom Q&A window or on the LinkedIn comment section or any platform that you have joined in. We'll direct them to the speaker. Let's make the most of the time that we have here with Srishti. So taking the first question here, Srishti. So this is from Meet. Are customer experience and user experience same concepts with different nomenclature as to application? Or do they have a different thought process and concepts altogether?
Yeah, I mean, UX is just one aspect, right? I mean, if you're building an application, you want to care about how the user experience is. So, which is actually somebody using it. But like we spoke about, CX is about anything that they do with the brand. So, the iPhone, because I took that example, how the iPhone looks, all of that could be ultimately called the user experience. But let's say, your return policy, your service, how your ease of purchase, what is the marketing messages you're getting? Do you get points when you purchase an iPhone? All of that is CX. So CX is much, much larger than UX, in short, right? But UX is one aspect of CX from if you define it that way, right? We truly don't, but from a product perspective, sure, it adds to the CX as well, based on how your experience and interaction with the product is, if you're talking about both the physical product or a website in that, for that matter.
Okay, a quick reminder to the audience, you can ask your questions on Zoom, but also you can have a live interaction with Srishti. You have to raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question live. I see one raised hand here. This is from Rose. Rose, you can go ahead and ask your question. Okay, before she comes online, there's another question for you here. Regarding data collection, what techniques do we use to identify and collect behavioral data pertaining to customers' intentions? For a particular domain, how do we datify a person's intentions towards a product or service when their intention directly contributes to their behavior and subsequent action that the product takes on them?
Yeah, I will interpret the question and then answer it because, I think ultimately what you want to do is there are multiple ways to collect data, right? Let's take a simple example. You have cookies, you have first party data, which is tracking what you're doing, right? So behavioral data could be all of that data. How much time are you spending on a page if you're talking about an online experience? What did you click? What are you interested in? So that's your behavioral data. If you actually have a profile with a brand, we have a lot of your profile data. What's your name, what's your age, what's your birthday, all of those kind of things, which gives you one sense, right? So ultimately, Defy, Unification, Customer 360 is about all of these interactions. You may call them, and the service guy may take some notes about the customer. So all of these things are really the datafication, and all of them, how you interact with that brand in any of these areas is how you would datify it and figure out, and then apply AI to predict and subsequent behavior and action, right? So what is the next best action? We talk about that, right? So you kind of have a historical action that the person did this, did this, did this. Now the important thing and the challenge is to predict the next action and delight them by giving them some options towards that, right? That's the CX challenge, I would say challenge, and where we want to, the problem we want to solve, if you will.
We have the next question from Tribhuvan. How does the CX fit in for products in the B2B segment, small enterprises, as this customer segment is very rigid on migration? Example from desktop to cloud.
Right. So, I think that's a great use case, right? Are we saying that we trying to sell them some, like they want to move to the cloud? Then, if you clearly know their intent, then you kind of sell them the product for that, right? So, I think in B2B, if there's actually directional clarity on which segment they fall into, you don't even have to waste your time, right? Assuming you're a SMB, which has a bunch of products, then you don't waste your time on the set of customers who are not even interested in your product, or you focus based on the data, right? So I don't know if I really got the question, but essentially this is all about segmentation, right? You leverage the data to segment and accordingly approach, because B2B is even more expensive than B2C, right? In B2C, you may send somebody a marketing message. You don't really call them to say, come to my website and buy something. Whereas in B2B, there is a human element. In many cases, you have sales teams, and it's more expensive to invest in things if you don't have the right segmentation, the right audience. Those misses are costly for the companies.
Hi,
I think
Srishti.
Tribhuvan has something more to say.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so the use case I'm trying to tell here is, so suppose there is a product and that's a legacy system, and it has around, say, 1 million customers, and they are in desktop version. Now, suppose out of those, only some are able to migrate to online. They are not willing to go to cloud. Maybe due to many issues. So how do we design that kind of product so that the user actually comes to cloud? Pricing is one part of it, of course, but I think more than pricing, how do we add more value? How do we think on that lines? Probably if you can, throw some light on that.
Yeah, this is the problem of the industry, not specific to CX, but we're really talking about how the move to cloud, which is an important problem itself. But here, the usual methodology is to ease people in, right? Typically, anything that runs on a legacy system today, with the advancements in clouds, can be lift and shift, right? So people talk about cloud, your cloud for you, right? So people don't feel that, I don't know if it's a privacy concern or whatever is the reason for them not to move. If your intent is to move people to the cloud and you're trying to look at a path for it, I think it's really about first getting them comfortable with how pricing is cheaper. It's really about, the 3 Ps here, and making sure that you start with giving, small modules on the cloud and ease people in, right? I mean, and have a lift and shift strategy, right? I mean, if you can support the same feature set on the cloud for that particular installation, then, the bar to shift becomes very low, right? So those are the kind of strategies you can apply. I mean, I don't know the specific case, but those are some general ideas.
Thank you, Srishti. Thank you so much.
Well, this is great, Srishti, and we have concluded the Q&A part of the session here. Any more questions, please, audience, please go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you. And for any further questions, as Srishti mentioned, you can ask her on any of the LinkedIn channel or any other way you would like to communicate with them, Srishti, email or any other platform.
Yeah, LinkedIn works. I mean, I think.
Okay, perfect. And audience, please scan the QR code to get an exclusive 30-minute session with industry practitioners like Srishti to clear all your doubts on transitioning to a product manager role. And now for the final and most exciting part of the session, I believe we had just like about 3 really good questions, Srishti, but I'd like you to pick the winner from those 3 questions and we'll reward them with a free digital course.
Okay, you need to pick the person, or how do you want me to pick the question?
Yeah, so whichever question you think, was the best, putting in a spot here, but, you could pick a winner for us.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, I think that the interesting one, maybe the UX and CX one, just because there can be confusion. So I would just give it to that because I think it hopefully helped clarifying what CX is, because a lot of the talk was about CX. So I would give it to that question.
Well, Meet, congratulations on winning the free digital course, and we'll get in touch with you with the reward shortly. We have enjoyed having you with us, Srishti. It's been a complete pleasure. Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute, a small gesture. So if you scan the QR code on the certificate, it will take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that we have created for you that will hold the recording of this session.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and amazing insights drawn from your experience in the industry. The session was amazing.
All right, I'm glad it's helpful, and hopefully this will raise some key thoughts in people as they are looking at their brands and growing their businesses and their experience.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you once again.
You'll send me the QR code in the email, so I don't have to scan it right now. But all right, you guys have a great evening, and thank you once again.
So thank you, Srishti. Audience, thank you for joining in. It was great interacting with you all. Do not forget to register for the upcoming sessions, upcoming webinars from our different speakers. So you can check the link in the chat window for the same. And with that note, I end tonight's session. Happy learning and stay skilled. Have a great night.